the idea is not for it to be like this transactional begging thing, but just to have like actual, meaningful conversations with people. And it just leads to business and opportunities and speaking engagements and just like all kinds of things. A lot of the things I wouldn't even be able to predict. And it just, it feeds my practice in so many ways and feeds my soul to a certain extent too.
Welcome back to the Center Stage podcast. My name is Danny Decker, and we've got a great guest for you today. I'm really excited to have a conversation with Josh Barron. Josh is the founder, owner of SB Legal, criminal defense and immigration law firm. Josh is also the host of the Business of Law podcast, which is how he and I first met a few months ago, and honestly, we had a great conversation, and he was someone I wanted to have on our show. And so, Josh, thank you so much for being here. Really, really appreciate you being here. And let's start with an introduction for folks that don't know you. Just give us your origin story. How did you get started in law?
Oh man, I went to law school for the worst possible reasons. I couldn't think of anything else to do, and there was no math on the LSAT, so no good reasons. But yeah, I kind of started out doing real estate litigation, and then I prosecuted for Salt Lake City, and then started my own little practice in '09, and have been doing it ever since.
Cool. And one of the things that I don't know resonated with me and is part of why I'm excited to have this conversation is you've got this like incredibly intentional focus on like referral and relationship networking, marketing, whatever you want to call it. But let's start there. Tell us about sort of your approach to referrals. And Josh, just so you know, I can't remember if I said this up front or not, but our audience is primarily solo and small law firm owners. So this is kind of our sweet spot, right up our alley. So yeah. So just tell us about how you think about referrals.
Yeah, my favorite people. So I love lunch. I just love lunch. I'm like passionate about lunch. And for a long time I kind of felt like that was maybe like an obstacle to my practice. I was like, think of all the casework I could do if I didn't go to these long lunches. But then over time, we started realizing that the lunches led to referrals. My energy was better. I was happier. I mean, it just had all these positive outcomes. So lunch has become kind of non-negotiable, where it's like the most productive part of my day. It's like the part we try to protect the most from other time things. And yeah, I just love going to lunch. And our my policy, I don't ask for referrals at lunch. So the idea is not for it to be like this transactional begging thing, but just to have like actual fun, meaningful conversations with people. And it just leads to business and opportunities and speaking engagements and just like all kinds of things. A lot of the things I wouldn't even be able to predict. And it just, it feeds my practice in so many ways and feeds my soul to a certain extent too.
I love it. One of the things we sort of first talked about, Josh, and I'll step back for a second and say like, yes, I own a marketing agency, and yes, Google Ads is something that we do for our clients. But one of the areas where I think we actually have some common ground is that I am a big believer that for small firms, really most law firms, absolutely best source of clients is referrals, word of mouth marketing. And so you kind of shared a story when I was on your podcast. I think in the early days of running your firm, you were investing a lot of time and energy in, I want to say it was Google Ads. I might have the details wrong, but then you made a massive philosophical shift. And so can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so from '09 to 17, we were primarily a Google Ads business. Like that's where the huge majority of our clients were coming from. And we were spending, 10, 20, 30, sometimes 35,000 a month on Google Ads. And then my partner retired in 2017. He started writing novels when we started our firm, and the novels were successful. And so he was like, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. And so I had to start thinking about what kind of firm I wanted. And it felt too risky to cut off the ads, but the firms that I wanted to be like didn't advertise. And so we kind of started on a path to do that. And then COVID kind of forced us to shut off the ads. And, we didn't turn the ads back on, but the phone started ringing. And so I think sometimes this, it's attribution's hard. It's hard to know for sure exactly where one client came from. because it's rare for them to just get a referral and then just immediately call you. They're going to Google you, they're going to go on your website, they're going to look at some of your posts, they're going to see, so when you ask them, how did you find out about us? They're going to give you an answer. And it's probably a true answer, but it's probably not the full picture. And I think that we were attributing a huge chunk of our income to these Google ads, and they were probably a piece of it. They were probably part of the reason people found us. But, it's kind of complemented by a referral or by other things as well. And man, it's changed my life to shut off the Google ads. I'm really glad that but I did it for many years, at least 8 years. Yeah, I think closer to 11 years where we were spending money on Google ads almost every month.
Yeah. Okay. And so I am again, even sitting in the seat of marketing agency owner, I really believe that maybe the first and sort of most important thing that digital marketing should do, especially for small firms, is really more about nurturing those relationships and referral sources. So just for anybody, I say this almost every episode, but I do not view a conflict between smart digital marketing and referral marketing. So I love everything that you're saying, Josh, and I hope folks that are listening to this are taking notes because I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot here. And so if I can get a little bit, I don't know, specific and tactical here. I mean, what is your networking calendar look like, Josh? I mean, are you getting lunch with folks literally every single day or like once a week, or what does it look like?
Yeah, so I try to do 10 lunches a month. Because I'll be in a court hearing or I'll have something right out, and I like to have like 2 hours available ideally. And sometimes people leave after 45 minutes and they've got to get somewhere. That's totally fine, but I don't want to be the one who's stopping the lunch if it's rolling. So yeah, we try for 10 lunches a month, and I think last month I was at like 12, so but the more that I do, the happier I am, the more energy I have, and it just leads to all these other business outcomes as well. So I for a long time was kind of encouraging people to make a list of the people that they had gone to lunch with, wanted to go to lunch with, but I just honestly hadn't done it. We had a few other types of lists that I would sometimes draw from. But a few months ago, I actually sat down and went through my calendar for the last like 5 years, looking at everyone I went to lunch with and put them into a spreadsheet and then added some people that I was like, why haven't I been going to lunch with these people? And so it ended up being like 80, and now it's probably up to about 100 people. And that feels like a good number where I have people, I'm not bugging people every week, but it's not going to be 2 years before I get back to somebody if I want to still go to lunch with them. So it seems like a good number, but if somebody had a list of 40, I'd be like, that's plenty. Like it's not about trying to get it to 15,000. You can't go to lunch with 15,000 people, but I think something in that like, maybe 40 to 100 range can be helpful. And it's really nice to start with people you've already gone to lunch with. They kind of know what it's like to go to lunch with you. They've already said yes. Much easier to get a yes from them than to call somebody cold and try to establish a lunch relationship.
So do you have any criteria like who makes it on the list? And again, for the attorneys who are sitting here trying to maybe start doing this, like where do they start? Who's on the list?
So that's a great question. So like again, a good exercise is to think about your last few referrals. Like think about your last two or three referrals, where they came from. How could you meet more people like that? Sometimes you have to use intuition, like, well, this was a referral from a firefighter, but I think that was a fluke. I don't think firefighters are going to be a great source of referrals. But sometimes it feels very repeatable. Other lawyers if we can't think of who we want to go with, we just go with other lawyers. We start there. But we've had therapists, we've had substance abuse treatment people. We've had all kinds of different types of people send us referrals. And when that happens, we try to kind of, again, like diagnose, is this something we could do more of? So I don't usually go to lunch with like preschool teachers. They tend not to have criminal defense referrals. But so that's one criterion is have they sent us referrals, or do you have an intuition that they could send us referrals? Another one is, do I like going to lunch with them? And so I kind of have like a 1, 2, 3 ranking where one is best and three is worst. And so one is I like going to lunch with them and they have good referrals. Two is they have one of those. Three is I really hate going to lunch with them, or I'm not sure that they've got. So I mean, like the goal is to not make it transactional. Like I have to pick who the people are that I'm going to spend time with. But then once I've picked those people, again, I'm not going and begging or going and pressuring them to try to give me referrals. I'm really just trying to have a genuine, sincere, fun conversation. I kind of think of myself as like a host of the lunch, like I want to make sure they have a good time. And when that happens and we have that connection, it always leads to good business outcomes.
So how do you pick your restaurants?
So I used to have my office in downtown Salt Lake. And I think Salt Lake has amazing restaurants. But I live in Lehigh, which is, like 45 minutes or so from Salt Lake. And now my office is not in Salt Lake, it's in Lehigh. And Lehigh does not have great food options, in my opinion. But there's this salad place in Utah called Zupa's, and I'm trying not to weigh that 1,000 pounds. And so there's a bunch of them. So a lot of times I'll just say, hey, I'm going to be by your office on Thursday. Can I buy you lunch? Is there a Zupa's close to you? And most people, I can't think of anybody who hates Zupas, but not that many people probably love it. Works out. And it works well for the people who want to be fast, but then you can like stay as long as you want to. So right now, Zupas is kind of my go-to, but I went to lunch at a Mexican place this week because it was in the same parking lot as the person who I wanted to go to lunch with. I asked him where he wanted to go, and it was great, and I'm glad that I've been there. And so the logistics of setting up the lunch are my least favorite part of it. Um, and so like I try to answer as many of those questions as I can in the initial kind of invitation. But I also don't want to look like I'm, picking everything. But I'm always happy to pay. Like if I ask somebody to lunch, I'm always like, it's well worth it for me to pay. There's no like we could eat at the nicest restaurant in Utah every day and it would be worth it financially.
I love it. And I'm asking these kind of like specific questions because it sounds like you've done hundreds and hundreds of these. And so you've
Wow.
probably really kind of figured out some great systems. So I love that. And I love that. I mean, you probably have the menu memorized at
I
this point,
do.
right?
I really
Yeah,
do.
that's
Can I
awesome.
tell you the script for the invite? It's kind of so I used to like I think about it and do this long thing, and now this is like the whole subject line, lunch question mark. The whole body is, I'm going to be by your office on blank date. Can I buy you lunch? That's the whole initial invitation. And then they can say yes, they can say that day doesn't work, whatever. And then from there again, yeah, I have to say, what about this restaurant? Is noon okay? But that seems to be good about letting people just say yes or no really quickly and not interrupting them for a long time.
Love it. And so is lunch pretty much is that the strategy, or do you also like are you a happy hour after work guy? Like do you it's really it sounds like you're just really locked in on these power lunches.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do other things if they seem fun. Like I'll speak at a continuing education thing. I'll, do other stuff. But like one of my scheduling rules, this is very personal to me. I don't think other people should have it, but I've got millions of kids and my wife doesn't want to go to bar mixer events. You know what I mean? So the rule that I have is I don't do stuff after 5:30 unless it's something my wife would want to do with me. And so if somebody's like, hey, we're doing this thing and it's a continuing education thing, I'll be like, hey, like if it's at lunch, I'll go. I'm not going to come if it's at 7 p.m. And it just helps me not have to think about it. Like it's not, I'm flattered by the invitation or whatever, but yeah. So lunch is really the main thing. We will go to a continuing education event, even if I'm not presenting. And the goal at that kind of event isn't to like get clients. The goal is to find somebody that I want to go to lunch with. So it's like all this stuff that's kind of feeding into the lunches, and then the lunches are the real thing.
Love it. That makes so much sense. Awesome. Okay. So what are some of the mistakes you see other attorneys making, or really other, honestly doesn't have to be attorneys, right? Just in the professional services realm, because everybody's listening to this saying, wow, this sounds great. I want more referrals. What are some of the mistakes you see other attorneys make?
I mean, all these are all mistakes that I've made and continue to make. One area that's just like such an easy way to kind of set yourself apart is I try to have like the half hour or even hour after the lunch be dedicated to following up on something from the lunch. Because like I think there's enough. Some people do lunch, not that many people do any follow up after the lunch. So it might be just sending them a thank you note. Thanks so much for taking the time. It might be sending them a book that came up while we were talking. Might be a gift that occurred to me while we were talking. Right now, I'm in love with these field notes notebooks. I just love them. They come in little 3 packs. They fit in your pocket. And so if I can't think of something to send somebody, I'll send them some field notes. And so when you just do that little gesture, another great one is if they're saying like, yeah, I'm trying to meet more divorce lawyers. So, start the introduction process to a divorce lawyer. Any kind of follow-up after lunch meeting really, I think, sets you apart. And so I just try to think of a way to kind of surprise them or delight them a little bit or serve them in that gap after lunch. Another one that's fun is, again, if I can't think of something else, I'll just write them a Google review. I don't pretend that I'm a client. I like make it clear that I'm a fellow lawyer in the community, but like just, write something nice about them and a reason that people should work with them if they need that kind of service. So yeah, just like trying to find at least one way to follow up after the lunch.
That is really great. I love how tactical this is. This is really good stuff. Josh, do you ever invite a group? Like, is this ever like a 3-on-1 type thing, or is it always 1-on-1?
Yeah, so I did a four-person lunch this week and it was great. Personally, my personal kind of lunch style, one-on-one is where it's at for me. I love it. When it's four people, like sometimes two of us will want to be like really intense and talk about our kids and like how, and the other two want to talk about sports. And then it's kind of weird when you have these two separate vibes at the same table. So if somebody invites me and there's going to be six people there, I'll go. But again, most of what I'm doing is saying like, oh, that person's cool. I want to go to a one-on-one lunch with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll do three people lunches, four people lunches, but the goal, what's going to be the most fun for me, and the goal is the one-on-one lunches most of the time.
Love it. So we're big advocates of combining like relationship marketing and relationship development, right? With marketing, right? So for example, we help most of our clients with a monthly email newsletter, right? Where it's a simple touch point, allows you to stay in touch with contacts at scale, right? Because I mean, not everybody is prolific as you are, right? But a lot of attorneys are, having a couple of lunches or a couple of coffees, every month. And as that list grows, it eventually becomes impossible to stay in touch with everybody personally. So we're big believers in things like, retargeting and social media and email to sort of not replace the in-person relationship, but supplement it. And so do you have any sort of thoughts around that? Is that something you do?
I love that. And like yeah, like you've taught me a lot about that. Like where it wouldn't have occurred to me. Like so I'm very active on LinkedIn. And I started doing LinkedIn during COVID because I wanted to do lunches and I kind of couldn't. And so the point on LinkedIn isn't so much to bring new lawyers, new kind of referral partners into my circle, although if it does, great. It's more like kind of a newsletter type idea of, if the people in my circle are going on LinkedIn, I want them to see valuable stuff that I posted. And again, maybe it helps me be in their brain. So I really like that idea. You talked to me about the retargeting idea of saying like, here are the people that we already know we care about and maybe kind of like a little bit of a circle around them of people maybe we don't know super well yet, but we'd really like to. Let's show them highly targeted, very personal ads. Like I think that's such a great, I wouldn't have thought of that. And so yeah, I think that there can be a role for using these tools to supplement that and deepen the relationship and remind of the relationship. And I think it's awesome when we can kind of supercharge it in that way. I think
Yeah,
it's
love
genius.
it. Okay, so Josh, what is something you look for before you make a referral to another attorney?
Mm. I think, it's really difficult for clients to be able to tell a good lawyer from a bad lawyer. And it's actually pretty hard for lawyers to tell that too. Like, I don't know enough about bankruptcy to know if this bankruptcy lawyer is good or not. And so we have to use like proxies. We have to use other things. These sort of credibility indicators. So what I'm really looking for is someone who's the kind of person that I want to associate with. And what I mean by that is somebody who's generous, somebody who um, does what they say they're going to do. They follow through and they say they're going to do something. And then I hope those are indicators that they do a good job at whatever their profession is. If they're conscientious with me, hopefully they'll be conscientious with clients and they'll be conscientious with their work. So that's kind of what, when I'm looking at a new referral partner, that's what I'm looking for. But then once I refer people to them, I'm looking for negative feedback. Like, does the client come back and say this was a disaster or they wouldn't return my phone calls? If that happens once or twice, I'm looking for somebody else. So initially I'm like, it's very impressionistic. And then after that, it's based on the feedback from the clients.
Love it. Josh, this is awesome. This is really great stuff. So, okay, so something I hear a lot from I don't know, business owners in general, not just attorneys, is when we're talking about networking, I'll hear something like, yeah, but I'm really introverted. Like networking is, I think a lot of people when they hear the word networking, they think of like going to like a chamber of commerce thing where there's like 70 people that they don't know. Do you have any advice for introverts who maybe want to get started in the world of networking?
Definitely. I mean, so I think that we want to lean into the most sincere version of whoever you are. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, if you're an introverted person, like, the goal isn't to imitate somebody else who's super extroverted. Um, from my understanding and with the introverts in my life, it's not that they can't go to lunch and that they don't enjoy going to lunch, but it can be draining. And so they might have to be a little bit more selective of where like it's energizing for me to go to lunch. If it's not as much for them, then they might have to say, I'm going to do one lunch a week, or I'm going to do two lunches a week. I think lunch is uniquely powerful though. So like if somebody was like, I'm going to do gifts, I'm not going to do lunch, I'd be like, that's fine, but I would really try some lunches. The other thing that I would say though is that sometimes when social interactions are draining, not always, but sometimes it's because we're kind of being fake. It's exhausting to be fake. And so if somebody said, I go to lunch, but if I first I'd be like, are you going to lunch with people you genuinely like? There's this guy that, he reaches out to lunch regularly. He works at a big firm. He probably has referrals. But I've just noticed I don't like going to lunch with him. He's a wonderful person, but it's just not a good fit. So I finally gave myself permission to not go to lunch with this person. So the introvert might be going to lunch with people that they don't like and then feeling bad that they don't have a good experience. I would say, like, let's try some other people. Let's find some people that you actually do like going to lunch with. So I think that someone's being introverted could be a superpower. They might be able to have a different type of lunch that maybe I couldn't have with that person. And I think that yeah, I mean, we need to be sensitive to the energy budget, but I think that there's probably a role for lunch. But at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy it, let's find a different strategy. Let's find something else that you do enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy it, you won't sustain it. And if you won't sustain it, it's not going to work.
Yeah, this is so good, Josh. This is just really great, concrete input, and I think it's probably going to be really helpful for folks listening. So tell us a little bit about the Business of Law podcast, how you and I first got connected. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I am very, very interested in how to build a successful practice. Like I just like it's a very interesting question to me. And I see lawyers who are so good at what they do, but haven't really found their clients. And so yeah, I mean I don't really sell a product or anything, but like what's interesting is like talking about it is a subject that other small firm owners are interested in, and I think it leads to criminal defense referrals. So like, I think it's another example of like if you make something good and if you're generous about it, it will lead to positive outcomes, and you won't always be able to predict what they are. And that's what my little podcast and newsletter has been. I write some stuff and I record some stuff, and then sometimes people like it and they respond to it well. And it
Yeah.
makes me very happy.
Well, and I'll say, as so I had the opportunity to appear on the podcast, and as part of that, I listened to a few of the episodes and really good stuff. So I
Thank you.
highly encourage our listeners to. I imagine it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, kind of everywhere
Yeah,
podcasts live, and again, it's the Business of Law podcast. Is that correct?
that's right. That's
Great.
right.
All right, Josh, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time, your expertise. For anybody who is listening and wants to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
LinkedIn's the best place. I try to write and, comment and message, and I've just met such great people through LinkedIn. So it's a good little water cooler to gather around.
Fantastic. So go connect with Josh on LinkedIn. We will put your profile link in the show notes. And with that, Josh, just thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.